order for today. First item is approval of today's agenda, and I see we have one addition.
Move to approve the agenda with the addition.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Citizens to be heard. Any citizens on any item that is not on today's agenda? Seeing none, approval of the minutes from the November 5th meeting.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second to approve November 5th's minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approval of payment of bills and vouchers.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second to pay the bills. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And our first item, approval to submit new requests for proposals for food service management. Julie. Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're back, and we would like to request permission to put out an RFP for food service. We have clarified the RFP process so that's a little easier for everyone to understand for as far as the vendors out there. We are asking for one bid for all meals for all three agencies. So, and we also took out the National School Lunch Program, which detention felt they didn't need. So.
Good. Any questions for these people on this issue?
Will you contact those that had submitted the RFP in the first round?
Actually, I've spoken to both of them and they're expecting it to be out today.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for the board's wishes?
I'd move that we move forward with the request for proposals. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the request. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie, you've got your next item.
I got my next item. I had a resignation last week, and I'm requesting that I go ahead and start the process to fill that position for 2020.
And you wanted to start them December 31st? Oh,
No,
oh.
January 1st. I need the position right now, but it's going to take me at least 6 to 8 weeks to get somebody hired. I have nobody on the books. I have to start from scratch.
Okay, well, the board's
Move approval for her to proceed on January 1st. Second.
have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, we're moving right along. Eric, you guys want to do yours? We'll do the agenda addition here, as long as we got a little extra time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning.
Jessica Warren, Eric Dodds. Chris McShane is here as well from Onstead if we need some support.
Pull up another chair if you want.
Chris, do you want to join us? I think you guys have...
You can bring up a chair. Yeah, have another one.
At our meetings, you have to bring your own chair when you come.
This is a Spartan organization.
I believe you have in your packet some correspondence regarding a request for right of entry that the diversion project has been trying to secure from some property owners to do design survey work, primarily soil borings along the southern embankment in Minnesota. This effort to get the rights of entry started several months ago. The Corps has requested that the Diversion Authority obtain those rights of entries. In Minnesota, the request started after the MCC-JPA board was formed in late August, and I believe at your September meeting we authorized some land agents to reach out to these property owners and try to secure a voluntary right of entry to do the soil boring work. The team of land agents has been out meeting with the property owners, trying to get those rights of entries. At the October meeting, so a month or so into that process, we realized we were, I guess, fighting maybe an uphill battle, and we weren't getting very many property owners to sign. And so at the October board meeting of the MCC-JPA, it was discussed that we would send a letter to those property owners. You have a copy of that letter in your packet, asking them to sign, sort of requesting that they sign by November 14th, and if we didn't sign, I guess the expectation was that would be brought forward to Clay County for some consideration of what the next steps might be. And so as last week, we did get a few additional property owners to sign the rights of entries as a result of the letter. But as you saw on the list, and we handed out an updated list here for you this morning, there's still a number of those property owners that have not yet signed. The Corps is actively working on doing soil borings across the river, and they're anxious to get over to this side of the river and continue that soil boring work. The soil boring work that they're wanting to do with these rights of entries will help determine exact soil conditions and the design parameters that they need to use to design the embankment. And I think many of these property owners are probably asking questions about the details of the project. You know, where exactly is the embankment going to be? How is the water going to be this way or that way? And it's really sort of a chicken or the egg thing. We need to get the soil borings to be able to do the design that will help inform the answers to their questions, and so we're in a bit of a circular pattern there, I suppose. So anyway, bottom line, I guess we're here today to ask Clay County if you are willing to proceed with some court action to grant these rights of entries. Chris can maybe talk about the process that's been used in the past to get rights of entries through the court process, and I guess we're here to answer any questions that you might have. So.
Yes, you want.
I have a question first.
Oh, sure.
So according to the letter, your deadline to sign was Thursday,
Yep.
right? So my question is why, if you had a deadline of Thursday, been added to the agenda in the proper advertising?
Yeah, no, fair point, and we had intentions of doing that. I think Thursday kind of got away from us and realized that we didn't get in touch with you guys until Friday to get it on your agenda, and so that was sort of an oversight on our part.
And my other question is, being on the Land Management Committee of the Diversion Authority, it has appeared as though we would have a policy to really work with landowners, and so to come to this board less than a week after this deadline, it just doesn't really appear like we're making due diligence to contact them before we're...
We've been working with these homeowners, some of them for 4 months, trying to get them to sign, and a couple of these for over a month. So they know, and a lot of them have flat out said no, no matter what.
And we had a lengthy discussion about this at our joint powers meeting last in October.
But if we have been working with them for so long, why then can't we follow the proper advertisement period for having it on an agenda? That's my...
I can tell you that we can't do anything today anyway. To move forward with the process, we need to do a resolution identifying the rights of entry that are necessary. I wasn't even aware of this meeting until yesterday afternoon, so I haven't prepared a resolution. I don't know if there has been a resolution prepared, but I don't believe that is the case. We've prepared them for Moorhead in the past to do right of entry. I think the last one was 4 years ago. So it's not going to be hard for us to put it together, but it's not something that I have done yet. So if that helps put your mind at ease, that helps at least push it off until another issue. So.
Yeah, I learned of this being on today's agenda yesterday. So.
But do you see where my concern is? I mean, we've had lots of discussion at the Land Management Committee about stuff like this, and so...
Yep.
I think we thought it was important to bring it to you guys this week, as opposed to...
Well, I think the piece of discussion that we can have today will be if the county board does grant this request from the MCC GAPA, who's going to do the work, and just for the board's information. All the legal work on these types of issues on the Cass County side through the Cass County Joint Water Resource District is done by Onstead Twitchell. And therefore, it kind of frees up the Cass County Attorney's Office from having to do that stuff on and I would suggest that any legal work that's, and of course, those expenses are all picked up and paid for by the diversion authority. And I would suggest that with our county attorney's office as busy as they are, that we would do the same as the Cass County side and suggest that the MCC JPA work through Onstead Twitchell. I guess that would, you know, I think we can maybe have that discussion and maybe agree on that today, and then, you know, as Commissioner Moser said, come back with this as a properly agenda item, you know, listed agenda item.
When you indicated you'd have to come back anyway, right?
Yes, the statute, which is 117041, which is right of entry prior to the eminent domain, if it's for a geotechnical investigation, which these are primarily for, you have to do that by a resolution of necessity. So I reached out to county attorney's office yesterday and pretty late in the day because I was not aware of it until then, and I haven't had a chance to discuss it with them, but I think that Commissioner Campbell speaks of is probably the main purpose for me to be here is, do you want me to prepare those and move forward and the whole process for right of entry, or is that something you want your attorneys to be working on?
Well, I certainly support it being done by Onstead. I think periodically, I think it would be good to keep our county attorney's office apprised as to what you're doing. I think, you know, Brian, you'd probably like that.
Right. I'm supportive of what you're saying. I think Onstead Twitchell, being the expert in it and doing it, it makes sense that they continue to do it. And just as long as, I think Tony in our office is our main civil person who you reached out to, and I think just keeping him apprised and so that I'm apprised and so we just know what's going on and can agree with how it's moving forward, I think is all we would be looking for. It makes sense.
Right?
Just got a question too. I mean, these guys are involved in the committee meetings and stuff like that, and I haven't been. Why aren't these people signing? What's the problem, or what? I mean, I realize diversion is the problem, evidently, you know. So, but they just don't want anybody on their land to do stuff, or what?
Yeah, because a lot of this surveying actually doesn't even sometimes take walking on their land, just driving by it. And it's because they just say no if this has to do with the project, not at all. So that's basically what it is. A lot of these surveys are not very invasive. Some do have borings on them, but some of them that have borings have signed. And in Cass County, we do reimburse them for the borings on their property.
But I will say part of the conversation is that people have a hard time signing an easement for eternity. I mean, that's been part of the.
These are rights of entry.
Oh, right, but we talked about this at land management about some of the additional.
Yeah, so Commissioner Mojo is referring to
that's the biotic
environmental monitoring easement that was originally drafted as a perpetual easement. It's being redrafted as a 50-year easement, and so we've fixed that. But this is a rights of entry.
These are different surveys, different studies for the embankment. Those biotic ones are.
Commissioner Gross, if I can, to reply to you through our MCC JPA, we had got a report from our land agents who were hired by the MCC JPA to work with these landowners, and their comments, according to the land agents, were these people don't think this project is ever going to happen, and you know, so they're convinced that the contested case hearing is going to go in their favor, and that's why they don't want to do this. And you know, we're from the position that the project is going to happen, and we don't need any more delays, and these things need to be done on a timely basis.
Hey, you mentioned that in some cases just a drive-by. Why would you need a signature if it's just a drive-by?
I'm not sure that's what the Corps required. So I've discussed that with them on a few of these, but the Corps is requiring rights of entry on a few of them. Even if it's just driving by and seeing how the land lays out and things like that. I'm not.
They might not be doing soil drainage.
Yeah.
What you say.
But they'll still be driving on their property.
Yeah.
The right of entry that we have drafted and presented to the landowner is all encompassing, so there's 6 different types of surveys that might take place on these properties. The soil borings is the most acute or critical type of survey where they actually have to go out and do that prior to design or finalizing the design. They also need to do land surveys just to do topography and figure out where the various, confirm the LiDAR to figure out where things are at and what the elevations are. They need to do cultural resources surveys on some of them, which is to figure out if there's anything there that needs to be protected during the construction process. If there's anything that is culturally significant, whether that be a Native American type of a site or whether it be a historical building. So that's a type of a survey that needs to take place. They need to do hazardous radioactive toxic waste, which is essentially a phase 1 environmental if you're familiar with a real estate transaction. They need to do that on quite a few of the properties just because that's part of the environmental impact statement process. They might have to do what's called a raptor survey to make sure that if there are any raptors, primarily eagles, that are impacted by the project, that they know where those nests are at and what the patterns of those birds are so they can protect them. They can also do, there's one other survey I can't remember.
Historical building.
Geotech review.
And then the other is a biotic and a geomorphological survey. That's what Commissioner Campbell was discussing with the environmental monitoring easement. Several of the properties where they need to do soil borings also require a survey to determine biologically what's in the waterway that runs through that property, what fish live there, what invertebrates live there, so they can just identify them, count them, put them back in the river. Most of those are done by boat, although they do need the right to be able to, if they get fish or if they get mussels, they need to step up on the shore to actually do the measuring and the cataloging. And then the final one is a geomorphological survey, which is they put a survey point here and a survey point here, and they take a bathymetric survey identifying the shape of the river between point A and point B. And then they also do some soil samples to figure out what types of soils those are. And the purpose of those biotic and geomorphological surveys is what is the impact that this project ultimately has on these properties. And to the extent that we discover that there is an impact, then there's going to be an adaptive management plan that's in place to try to mitigate or try to minimize that impact. But until we know what's there to begin with, we can't figure out if anything has changed.
Thank you for that explanation. I mean, all that verbiage probably lost me a little bit.
Jenny?
No, but thanks for the update.
So, and I'm not trying to start a fight or anything, but what happens if it doesn't happen? I mean, you're hearing from people, if I sign this and then it doesn't happen, then you still have the right of entry forever. So is there a clause in here, or not forever, but
The right of entry
like what happens if
expires.
it does? What's your answer to those people?
Right of entry expires in 2021, but if the project doesn't happen, those are void, correct?
Yeah, there's a
And that's been
deadline, which is
relayed to
2021.
landowners.
Yes.
It's in the
Yeah.
agreement,
Yeah.
as to what the expiration date is. I've been working on rights of entry on the North Dakota side and also the Minnesota side with Moorhead for 9 or 10 years. And there's been many properties that we've acquired a right of entry for that are no longer necessary for the project. Something shifts, they find something that says, hey, we got to avoid sand, or we have to avoid a cultural site, or we have to, so they readjust the project, and the project has changed substantially in the 10 years that it's been studied. So that's really the purpose of acquiring a right of entry as opposed to some sort of a permanent property right.
Right.
Early on, that was one of the main things we were telling people is sign your right of entry. If you're telling us that your property is not appropriate for this project, sign the right of entry. Allow people to go out there and determine, is your property correct or is it not correct for the design of this project? We're further along in the process now for design, so it's something that it's unlikely that there would be a significant change as a result of this. It would be more so, there might be a beefed up design of the southern embankment if there's sand, for instance.
So if you don't access the property by the December 30th, I didn't see that initially, the 2021, then you'd have to come back for another.
And there's been several properties on the North Dakota side where we have gone back to the same property owner over and over again. And the landowners aren't real happy when we have to go back to them 2 or 3 times. So we try to extend that time frame out so that it's a reasonable deadline, so it's not a forever situation, while at the same time, providing enough time to actually do the surveys that are necessary.
We also encourage the property owners to negotiate with the land agents, so we're talking to them if they want a shorter deadline, if they want us to come back and talk to them every year about it. I mean, we do offer like negotiations too, so.
We try to avoid it because we don't want every agreement to stagger when it expires. But yes, we have been willing to work with landowners. So.
Well, in terms of the legal advice, I think it probably makes sense to keep it with Onstead Twitchell since you've been working with them. My only, clarification is just the money piece. Somebody, how does that filter specifically for Clay County's portion? Where's the money coming from?
Yeah, right.
How are we billed?
Yeah, so if Onstead Twitchell is hired, Onstead Twitchell will, they will bill the MCC GAPA. The MCC GAPA, through the fiscal host is Clay County. So Lori would submit the payment to Onstead Twitchell. And then at the next month's Diversion Authority meeting, that would be presented for reimbursement. And that's how the process works at Cass County Joint Water Resource District. And we probably want to keep that same thing. Lori is aware of that, about these things, and we talked about, what dollar amount is she comfortable with on a monthly basis, to being able to take, and this is going to be well within that. It's going to be a little bit more significant when we start actually buying land, because then but I think she's even got that planned out and how that would work.
So how is it split up between Moorhead and Clay County? The reimbursement percentages?
Well, the Diversion Authority pays it all. It comes out of the Diversion Authority's budget.
Right, but you just said that you bill.
We're the fiscal host.
Right.
So it comes to Clay County.
So we don't, I'm just wondering how much we can assume to be spending on this.
None.
So the other thing I might add to that, so right now, the MCCJPA has applied to the DNR for cost share, and that hasn't come through yet, but at some point, hopefully, there'll be state dollars that get assigned to the MCCJPA that would be used for acquisition programs. And that would be, in a fund that you would also, I'm not sure if it's a reimbursement or if it's grant, but nonetheless, you would have, state dollars to use for the acquisition program. Mm-hmm. Until that time frame, the Diversion Authority, with, I guess, primarily North Dakota dollars, is reimbursing the expenses for the Clay County MCCJPA group.
And I'll have to look into whether I have to be appointed as some sort of a special relationship with the county. I have not looked into that yet, and Brian may know better than I do, but we'll look into that, and if so, before we do any kind of court action, we'll get that all.
Yeah, but I believe in the establishment of the MCCJPA. That organization has the ability to hire professional services.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's under that, and that's why I'm suggesting that this board, we have an MCCJPA meeting on Thursday. And my suggestion would be that we pass something today telling the MCCJPA that we want the legal professional services for the MCCJPA to be handled by Onstead Twitchell. And then the MCCJPA can approve that through its contract or through its legal powers. I'm pretty sure that included legal.
I think that's, may have already been done, so I know Onstead is already providing services, they've already submitted
Yeah.
an invoice for some of that through the MIC boards.
So it's the MCC GAPA that's hired the land agents? It's the MCC GAPA that's hired Eric's firm for some of the admin work that's going on? So,
Okay, board's wishes?
well, I would move that we recommend to the MCC GAPA that they contract with Onstead Twitchell for legal services regarding diversion acquisition items and rights of entry and all of that stuff.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Would you also request that Chris prepare the resolution for the
Yes.
next meeting?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none? Is there- no. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Just as a heads up, I'm not gonna be here next Tuesday, but hopefully Chris and Jessica will be.
And I think John Schotter is planning to present as well, so he
Oh.
could probably answer more of the logistics of this.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know if, Brian, I don't know if Tony is going to be kind of watching over some of that, maybe,
He would, and I think I'll just plan to have him up here too, just to be able to.
just at least for that agenda item?
Yep,
Thank you. That'd be good.
And Tony is who I had called yesterday, so I'll touch base with him today.
great, thanks.
Gabe, come on up. Review approval of updated Clay County Emergency Operation Plan. Good morning, Gabe.
Yeah, good morning. Morning, Commissioners. So this is basically a cycle. I don't know if you got that on the, doesn't show it on the minutes, but it's a 4-year cycle, so I guess every 5th year it'll come before the board for review. And then next year, year 2, it'll be regional peers, so the Northwest Region of EMs reviews our emergency operations plan. Year 3, it's HSEM. Year 4, it's our program coordinator for HSEM, and then it'll come back to you. So it's kind of a living document. It's continually updated and amended. The only really major changes that you probably would have happened since Brian retired and I came in was essentially updating addresses, names, and things like that. Other than that, none of the annexes or anything like that. The content hasn't been changed. I would anticipate a little of that coming up in the future, though. So I'm just looking for the chair board to, or the commissioners to approve it. I need a signature on a document to send to HSEM for their records. And then on the master plan here, there's just a spot for the commissioners to sign off.
Okay. Questions for Gabe on this?
I'll move to approve the emergency operation plan.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the request, to approve the plan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. There you go, Gabe.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You have that,
So the
you
whole
want me to
plan-
sign it right now?
The whole plan is on this, right, Gabe? Is all that stuff on this?
It is, everything is on there. Colleen has one for just Grant to sign, and then this one here is for all the commissioners. So you can pass it around. This will stay with the original, just the hard copy.
Today's date? So it's on here?
19th.
Yep.
Yeah, Steve, you're next with Lake Country Service Cooperative Board election by ballot.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As you recall, earlier this fall, this board brought forth a nomination to bring forth Commissioner Campbell for consideration, the nomination for Lakes Country Serve Co-op. He's been serving on that board for over the last year or so. And so this board set forth a nomination. Today we have a ballot that Lakes Country has prepared, and what they're asking to to be done would be to vote for up to 3 people for 4-year terms. If you look on the ballot, there are three names listed, but there is also another, should there be someone else that you think would warrant that nomination. And what we'd be looking for is to fill those ballots out and hand those back in, and we will send them to Lakes Country to be counted.
Just all 3 of these are current incumbents.
Yes, within your packet, a couple of them have put forward information to kind of talk about their experiences of both in their professional lives and with the Lakes Country. And so
there was actually supposed to be one for Doug Heapsch too. Apparently it
must not have made it to our.
Yeah, because he also had a little.
And these ballots go in as well.
Well, that was simple. Next item, 2, simple one, budget discussion.
Lori's coming on up here, but as this board certainly aware, back in September 24th, through resolution 2019-32, this board certified the preliminary budget for 2020. During our board discussion that day, it was requested that prior to the Truth and Taxation meeting on December 3rd, that we bring back the budget for a discussion. And what you have before you is a packet of information that Lori and I plan to walk through with you. If you have any questions or comments, who is short?
I don't have one.
Oh. Oh, no, this pack.
No, this is a different detail.
And so if you have any questions throughout the process, go ahead and let us know. The first form of your packet is a summary of the 2020 tax levy by funds. If you take a look at the bottom, the levy that we were set minus the county program aid was $35,014,703. That was a net levy, or excuse me, a levy increase of 7.09%. But with the adjustment for new construction, that gave us a final levy increase of 5.85%. In walking through that, I think we've talked about, we've originally, on our first go-around, we were right around the 13% basis, which you asked us to go back and take a look at, and we've done a number of different things to mitigate that. What I would ask first to do maybe is take a look at, Commissioner Campbell had mentioned wanted to go through the new requests that are a part of our budget. And so maybe what we can do is go through that form first. All of the issues on here have been through our PIC department prior to being placed in the budget. And I'll just kind of go through and give the board a refresher on each of these different items to what they pertain to. The first issue in personnel has to do with the Human Resources Department, with the growth that we've been experiencing in the county level. Darren's staff have been challenged to keep up to date and making sure that all of the things that they've normally completed are being done. And so the request went forward this year to add an additional administrative position. As part of our market study, Melissa Young's administrative assistant position was evaluated, and it was determined that she was no longer had the responsibilities of an administrative assistant, but that of a HR generalist. And so that position was moved, which made there a need to have coverage for the front window and help with that. So the first request has to do with $17,527 for coverage at in HR. The second piece is the recorders, $2,902. That would be adding back the deputy recorder. When Kimberly Savageau was hired, it was not replaced. The position was replaced, but not the deputy recorder position. The challenge that they're finding down in that office is in the event that Kimberly's not there, while there's certainly qualified people down there, there's somebody that needs to be in charge to make sure things can happen, and Kimberly's not being contacted on days off when she's at conferences. The third piece is the courthouse, law enforcement, DMV, grounds and maintenance. If you recall, in the planning of the law enforcement center and the correctional facility, we knew obviously that we would be gaining additional square footage, but we didn't make adjustments to the custodial budgets to address that. The idea was that we were going to evaluate it over the first year to look at the needs. And what you have before you here is a request from Georgia for an additional 2 full-time employees, and to make the adjustments. They would not necessarily be just designated for the facility, but would be utilized in conjunction with the entire campus. The next piece was the sheriff's budget. That would be requesting making an existing deputy sergeant. What the sheriff determined is that there are a number of times throughout the week where there was no supervision or no sergeant supervision on duty, and so nobody to report to in certain circumstances, and this hiring would close that gap. And so that would be a $6,198 addition. Extension, salaries regular. We're in the third year of our 3-year contract with the extension, and this just provides the additional cost to that contract for year 3. And then public health has a variety of different positions listed here. Basically, the need with the demands and the caseloads that they're experiencing in public health to address those different issues. In addition to the expenses, there are also revenues that are attached to the 2020 budget that have also impacted the 2020 budget. So with that, I would turn it over to the board for any questions or clarifications on the new requests.
Thanks, Steve. Questions for Steve or Laurie on this?
Were there new requests from outside agencies over and above just the maybe wanting like a cost of living increase type of thing?
I don't believe there were any huge increases.
No.
Other than the 2 to 3%, something like that.
Nothing.
I think maybe the library had a little bit more.
3.23%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was okay.
But nothing, no major changes in the new request from any other appropriations.
Okay. Thank you for this report.
And then I would move down into the section. We also, when we went back and went back to our board, or excuse me, our departments, and sat down with Lori, we looked at additional ways to mitigate the increase of the levy. And so you have a form in there, cuts made to the 2020 budget. And just walk through those. We had insurance excess. Each year we have been, for the last 10 years, we've averaged about a 9% increase in our insurance costs. And this year we were fortunate to have about a 5% increase. And so the number that was initially placed in the 2020 budget, we were able to remove $400,000 from that. The corrections department had a new request for a scanner for its corrections facility. That was removed. That was $174,446. I think that they'll probably be coming forward at some point. They have additional funding sources, but it was removed for this year. Public health had revenues over expenditures from 2018 totaling $184,679 allocated to the 2020 budget. We also removed fund balances from our reserve and also partially from social services to also pay down that levy. Well, we looked at jail bonds and our wind tax. I think we talked about it here during this process, but you all have a form in there in your packet that dictates or shows that the sales tax allocations that we've received over the last year. And we have one month remaining in projections. I think Lori feels comfortable and confident on the conservative side that will be $2.8 to $2.9 million on sales tax. And just to put that in perspective, for 2019, in our planning, in our schedule for repayment of principal and interest, we were looking at $1.8 million dollars, and so we're quite a significant increase to where we were at. And so just for the board's perspective, just an understanding, next year in 2020, we will be looking at needing $2.2 million. And from there, it will be going down to where we'll eventually settle into right about $2,020,000 for the remainder of the bond. And so in looking at that, if you take, again, jump back to our summary page, in preparation for the Law Enforcement Center and Corrections Facility, you guys established a building fund in which over the last number of years you've increased that $50,000. In the initial budget, we had $400,000 that was allocated for the building fund. The remaining $50,000 that's still there goes to Joe Olson's maintenance budget. So we were able to take $350,000 from the building fund and not include that in the levy. And we felt comfortable and confident based on the sales tax projections that that was something we could do.
So that's part of this 500,000. That's the jail bond and wind.
Right. So the 350 plus the 150 in the wind.
On the wind. Okay.
And the wind, yep.
And so the wind is those are revenues that we get in that we're shifting to help pay the expenses rather than pay a bond payment.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we had an increase in Lori can maybe any questions here, but increased cost allocation revenue, a decrease of 75% of the maturing debt of $84,944. Based on Commissioner Gross's request, we went back to our department heads. We were able to decrease our office supplies by about $10,000. And then we have a decrease of unallocated miscellaneous expenses of $20,000, which had an impact of $2,008,669.
So, Lori, explain to me again that decreased 75% of maturing debt. So we're reserving 75%.
Right. As part of our jail funding schedule,
Yep.
we budgeted 75% of our maturing debt that we would continue to levy for, but allocated towards that.
Right.
When Brian was here, we had room to bump that up to 100, so we had been doing 100% of that.
Oh,
so just
okay.
dropping it down to the initial 75%.
Okay.
Saves us the $84,000.
So we're still saving that 75%.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And so making those adjustments, again, that got us to a total levy of $35,014,703. I did also include within your packet the year-to-date revenues and expenditures.
Steve, before we go there, just to, I'd like to make a comment for the record here too, Lori, that even though these sales tax collections are considerably more than we anticipated, it was never believed that we would collect enough just in sales tax to cover the cost of those projects.
No, not in our schedules. We always anticipated using some local funds or some levy funds.
Levy, yeah.
To pay off that, so.
Including the jail bond and wind.
Right.
Was all kind of, so, any idea that, we still need to reserve.
Right, we were still putting in significant levy dollars.
Yeah.
To pay for the jail project.
Right, because even
Above
if
and
you,
beyond.
you know, if we collect 3 million a year over 20, that's 60 million.
Right.
You know, our project was 50-some million dollars before interest.
Right.
You know, so that tells you that, you know, we still need other revenue dollars to pay that. In case there's somebody out there thinking that they.
Yeah, so even though the sales tax revenues are coming in well above what we anticipated, we still are gonna be using levy dollars to help pay for the project.
Probably a reduced amount.
A reduced amount,
Yeah.
but we still will be needing some.
I wanted that in the record here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, that could change. I mean, could change significantly
Oh, yeah.
in the course of this.
15 years from now, that
Yeah.
number could be 4 million, or it could be 2 million.
Within your packets, we also have included the revenues and expenditures year to date. In reviewing the information with Lori, our expenses would seem to be in line from where we are within the year. I think the only big number that stands out, of course, is our emergency management, based on the flood event that we had this year. In talking with Gabe, that's where a significant portion of that. All the paper and documentation for reimbursement to FEMA has been completed, and so we will be looking to receive some reimbursement. Generally, it takes a year.
A year or so, yeah.
So we're not incorporating any revenue payback into our budget.
No,
yet.
not in this one.
Yeah, so that'll come,
That'll-
when we get
hopefully
it,
next year
that'll
sometime.
make 2021 look better.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
And again, our revenues show a little bit lower than where we are to the year, but that's expected with most revenues coming in 4 to 8 weeks behind. So, unless there's any questions on that. I would note too, we've talked a little bit about this, but we'll be making some adjustments in 2020 with our insurance. How we can contribute to our employees, and the savings that we've talked about is not allocated at all into the summary for the 2020, because there's not a real adequate way. We don't know who we'd be hiring, and so there'll be a potential savings also in that could impact the budget.
Yeah, until we get some historical.
Correct, yeah.
But
We just have no
know-
idea.
We know there's gonna be.
There will be some savings.
There's gonna be some savings. We just can't identify that exact number yet to be able to safely budget.
Right.
Okay, any other questions?
Do you know from the schools, the referendums that passed, when will you have that information from them?
I typically don't even get that until December 28th or so. The Barnesville information is in there, so that's already included in the truth and taxation notices that will be going out. But the DGF and the Moorhead schools information, I don't have any information on that, so.
So the statement that goes out then will not include.
Correct. Will not for those two schools.
And if there's a way we could get that information out
But
to people,
that-
so
but
people
that-
know.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure that we need to get that information to people, that when they get their statements, I think people know that it passed.
Right, on those two school district truth and taxation notices, there is a statement right on it that says, if you had a referendum on the November election, your taxes may go up. So there's no amount associated with that, but it does say that on there, so.
Okay. Any other questions for these people? It was a tough budget year, but you guys did a great job, and Steve, all the department heads also, everybody contributed, and it worked out as best it could under a year like we've had, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good creativity.
Okay, committee reports. Jenny, you ready?
Last week I attended the Cass Clay Food Systems or Food Partners meeting through City Chambers. We had a nice tribute in honor of Commissioner Vern Bennett, Cass County Commissioner, who passed away. He really has given so much to our area, so thankful for that. Had an update on the single-use packaging material snapshot on different companies within the area. We had an update from the Horace City on different foods-related issues they have going on and farmers markets. We had an update from the New Roots Farm Incubator and the Cass Clay Hunger Coalition. Last week I also attended the MetroCog Executive Committee update. We talked a little bit about a CD that they had expiring, and we asked staff to contact area banks to see if there's some better rate options, or like a money market account with that stuff. So had an update on the MTP approval process this year. We had one big meeting and invited the different jurisdictions to that, and it seemed to be a good opportunity for people to ask questions. We did still have them, as we had here, MetroCog, present to the commissions and councils, but I think in the future that's a good way to have good dialogue on that. Cass Clay, or the Case Plaza remodeling follow-up, a couple minor issues now that they're finally back into that area, that space. And we had a follow-up on the dialogue with the FM Diversion Land Management Committee, Commissioner Pepcorn and Chuck Hendrickson, Councilmember Hendrickson from the City of Moorhead, still maintain they'd like to see more than an ex officio presence there, so they'll talk to the Diversion Authority further on. I also attended the SWCD meeting last week. Talked a little bit about the buffer balance fund, and what the balance is on that. So if you could follow up with me and just get that to me, they were curious on that. We had several payments for the buffer planting that are going out, so it's promising to see that they're chipping away at those remaining buffer strips that need to be planted and then reimbursed. Talked a little bit about the district 2020 district capacity work plan, and then they will have staff evaluations and discuss the health insurance coverages. They are busy. They go to a ton of meetings, and so we had a lot of meeting updates between the Wild Rice One Watershed One plan and the Buffalo One Watershed One plan. They're going to lots of meetings. Yesterday, I attended the township officers meeting in Dilworth. Thank you to our staff and representatives for their presence there. It was a long meeting, but it really covered so many different areas, and good information and collaboration between the township and staff. And so thank you to them for their invitation to be there. And then yesterday, I also attended a meeting with representatives from the Moorhead Schools, Lakeland Mental Health, and Social Services. Lakeland provides school-based mental health services in Hawley and Barnesville and Moorhead, and recently there's been some difficulty in terms of billing, and it's costing a lot of money, and so we just wanted to get together to see if there's any way we could bill easier. But the problem is private insurance companies only want to pay X amount towards those services, and it's oftentimes less than a third of what it actually costs. And so I have heard from the community how vital it is to have those services available to that population of kids. A lot of them are really, really struggling, and so as of September 1st, Lakeland will now do the billing instead of the schools, and so I think that will alleviate some of the issue. It is going to have to be an issue that's lobbied at the state level, though, to figure that out, because it's kind of a mess. So that concludes my reports.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, on Tuesday the 12th, we had a division executive coordinating meeting. At that meeting, we had some discussion about, there was going to be a presentation regarding the legacy fund in North Dakota, and should the Diversion Authority be testifying with that. There was really no formal presentation that I'm aware of that was given there. We got an update on the P3 schedule. We always receive an executive director update now during those meetings. And there was recaps from meetings they had with the Office of State Engineer in North Dakota. And then some discussions regarding communications with the Minnesota DNR. We were informed of a meeting that was going to be held with the MnDAC Upstream Coalition. And then we always have a briefing on the status of the court cases between the Buffalo Red permit appeal and the contested case, and there was really nothing to report on those as of yet. And then we, under old business, we continue to do the 2020 Diversion Authority budget preparation discussions. That same day, we had a owners meeting for the jail and LAC project and the West Central Regional Juvenile Center project. And I think I'll defer to Steve to give the report on those meetings. I think they're going fairly well. We're getting down to the end on both of them. We're looking at a February-March timeframe on both of them, I think, to be occupied. So on Wednesday, I was invited to by Commissioner Larry Knutson from Becker County to go visit the Detroit Lakes Transfer Station. So I went there to, and basically it was not necessarily to look at the transfer station, but to look at their new recycling center that they have there, and it's pretty impressive what they have going on there. And I don't know if any of you have been able to tour where we currently take our stuff to Minn Kota. It's similar to what Minn Kota has to offer, and you know, I think Larry is kind of hoping to open some dialogue about how we might be able to work more together with Becker County, maybe with them bringing. Right now, they take a lot of their solid waste material that cannot be burned, that goes to Perham. Anything that can't go there now currently goes to the Fargo landfill. And so we're starting some dialogue, and we have to get Kirk involved with this too, but he wanted me to come and see it first. But I think there could be some opportunities down the road there for doing some things together that would tie in nicely with our, you know, they're very supportive of our transfer station that we want to have done. So it was a trip worthwhile, and I tell you what, they ran a clean operation there. I was pretty impressed with what they were doing. Then on Thursday the 14th, we had the Lakes Country Service Cooperative Board of Directors meeting. There was a closed session dealing with some employment matters. It's unfortunate, but we had to deal with those. Several different updates, and there was some small budget revisions that certainly within the ability of the organization to handle. And that was that meeting. And then yesterday, yesterday we did have another Diversion Authority Chairs meeting, and we got a recap on presentations regarding the legacy fund issues in North Dakota. And what that is they're trying to decide should the state do something with their annual earnings that they get from the legacy fund. And just their earnings alone, I think, are somewhere in the area of $500 to $600 million a year that they earn on their investments. I think they must have $6 or $7 billion in their account. So there was, you know, there's some good discussions there. There was some talk about the diversion channel permitting process with the North Dakota State Engineers Association or Office, and we got some information regarding land auctions that just occurred in North Dakota that are in the area of the diversion project. So we were able to see get some idea on some land values. And I think I'll stop there. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Frank?
Now, the meeting I had, which was, Jenny already alluded to, was the township meeting, and I too want to thank our staff. I mean, we had a good representation, and yesterday was the first time one of the township officers came up to me and said, I think it's one of the best meetings I've attended, you know, and I was glad to hear that, you know, because there's been some really good reports there. I mean, not to single out anybody, you know, but Rhonda gave a good report in her department. Kathy and Rory gave a very good presentation on the vaping, you know. Mark Sloan and Kim, you know, they're identifying township roads. Dave will give a good update. I mean, everybody came up there and gave a good update, but it was just glad. I'm just glad to see our people out there, because that really makes that meeting. I know, as Jenny said, it went on a little bit long there. I mean, but it was good information. Evidently they enjoyed it, and I was glad to hear that it was beneficial to them, that our people were out there. And you can mark down March 16th is the next meeting at the Dillon Community Center. So. Now, that's it.
Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A week ago, I forgot to give my report from the City of Moorhead Planning Commission meeting, which was on Wednesday, November 6th. And in that meeting, we approved 3 requests, one at 1705 10th Street North. We approved changing the zoning from institutional to residential low density. And then we also had a request from Epic Companies for a conditional use permit to exceed the maximum building height on the property they're going to develop just east of the Junkyard Brewery. And that was approved. And then we also approved a request for the City of Moorhead for a conditional use permit to allow excavation in the floodway for the North Moorhead project. And there's at least 2 locations for that where they're completing the buyout from the flood mitigation. Then on Thursday, November 14th, along with Commissioner Mojo, I attended the Clay County Soil and Water Conservation District meeting. And then on Monday, yesterday, the 18th of November, I attended the Township Officers meeting along with the other commissioners, and that has already been reported on, and that's my report.
Thank you. I had Beyond the Yellow Ribbon meeting last week and had updates from the various organizations that work with veterans, and then some plans for some fundraising opportunities for the coming year. And I went to the Township Officers meeting, and staff did a great job, I thought. And Steve, I thought it was a good idea to have the Moorhead City Manager there too, to give an update on what's going on in Moorhead. I think that was something we haven't done before, so I thought that was good. So that was it for me. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, attended the Diversion Authority Chair meeting that Commissioner Campbell has talked about. That afternoon I participated in the Correctional Facility Owners meeting. We'd been having, I don't know if we mentioned on the board level, but they'd been having some issues in the tunnel leading from the correctional facility to the courthouse, taking on some water. And so they'd been looking into that issue. And it appears that with the high water table, we were having some challenges. There was also an issue that we determined that was left over from our 8th Avenue project that we did a couple of years ago. Those issues were taken care of, and I'm happy to report that the tunnel is dry again, and so that is a positive thing. Again, it's getting cold, so hopefully we'll have to take a peek in spring again, and hopefully we won't have any issues. We also work with construction engineers. Right now we're looking at January 12th for the correctional facility to be available, and we kind of put our thumb on them a little bit to make sure that they felt confident in being able to meet that date. While nothing's for sure in construction, they felt that the January 12th date would be something that they were going to be able to meet, and so that was a positive sign. The Juvenile Center meeting, as Commissioner Campbell mentioned, right now they're looking at March 12th would be their opening date, occupation date. I think we shared that they were having some potential issues with some VAV piping that could be quite a considerable dollar amount. They feel that they've addressed that, and while there is some cost, it's much less significant than what they had planned. They're up into the phase 3 portion of the facility now, redoing parts of the third floor of the secure unit. And so as they move from pod to pod, we may see some capacity concerns, losing a couple beds from where we're at, even with the openings. They've continued to be extremely full, which has made the process a little bit more challenging. So, on the 13th, I met with Rhonda Porter and Susan Roll. There's some possible exciting federal changes to for eligibility dollars in relation to cost of legal protection, or excuse me, legal representation. We may find in situations where there are kids who are FOIA eligible, that they may be able to be reimbursed for their attorney's fees, which is pretty significant. Rhonda has 5 contracts with our legal attorneys. So we worked on the 14th, worked with Onstead Twitchell and Mayor Judd. We had our first closing for the MIC and JPA on property in Minnesota. So we worked through that process, and then also had discussion on a variety of different issues with Mayor Judd. On the 15th, I participated in the regional administrator meeting in Fosston, Minnesota. We discussed budgets, labor contracts, MCIT, and we also were able to tour the Polk County materials facility, their recycling area. It's a 6-county collaboration for trash and recycling: Polk, Norman, Beltrami, Hubbard, Monoman, Clearwater. Again, very much like Commissioner Campbell found, it was in Becker County. It's just amazing to see the work that they're able to do, and how they can move that trash around and bring in additional recycling. Participated yesterday at the township officers meeting. Again, want to thank our staff for attending. We had 11 department heads there, 10 providing presentations. And so that certainly was positive. And yesterday afternoon, I met with Lori on some more budget issues. I just wanted to provide just a brief update. At the board last week, we talked about moving our board meeting on December 10th because of the AMC. The chair had talked about maybe we could look into just canceling that based on the fact that we would be meeting in just a couple other additional days. But it was brought up that we wanted to make sure that per diems wouldn't be missed. And per diems go out on November 28th, and so we did, if you look at your calendar, we did remove the board meeting from the 10th, the week of the 10th, off. And we also made the adjustment of moving board from the 24th of December to the 23rd of Monday. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Hey, Kevin, you have something?
Yeah, I do want to mention the Regional Juvenile Center. We are going to have a tour by our members at our January meeting, and we also suggested making preparations for an open house sometime in the March to April time frame, where we can invite all the member commissioners to come up. And I think Steve and James are going to work on that. It'll be a smaller version of what we did when we did the opening for the LEC, and so if you have any, if you commissioners have anybody in mind where you think that should be invited to that, if you can let Steve know. They're trying to come up with a date that's going to work for that. So,
anything else for the board? Adjourn.